this now is because the formal service, they want to make it very small. Right. And they said if you want to lay a wreath, you have to come before 10:30 to lay the wreath. So we're doing it now, and then we're going to Westmount for 11 o'clock to do the ceremony there.
10:45, but
10:45.
Right. Okay.
So there is a ceremony at the Westmount Cenotaph?
Yes, there will be.
Yep.
Okay.
I believe there will be one pretty much all the municipal cenotaphs.
Right.
And that'll basically sort of give a reason for not to get for so many people to gather in the downtown core.
Do you know if the ones in Westmount and elsewhere are open to the public?
They are open. They're not going to turn you away. There will not be any bands. There will not be any troops. Although possibly some cenotaph sentries. But other than that, it's you'll have a minister basically giving prayers. There'll be a couple of speeches, I would imagine.
Right.
And so people will be able to safely keep their distances while participating on the service.
Do you have anything to say about the fact that John A. MacDonald won't be attending this year?
Yeah. It is what it is. We're living in the real world now, you know? I mean...
it's... Did he have his flaws? Yes, he had his flaws. It's the only thing I can say on that. He's not necessarily a nice man. There are a lot of people, have done a lot of nastier things too. So, are we to judge him more harshly than other people just because he had held public office?
I actually have one other question. Ostensibly, especially when we're talking about Remembrance Day, we're talking about soldiers fighting for freedom of speech, civil liberties, and democratic rights, and so on. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that our democratic rights are somewhat eroded these days? I'm talking about police repression of public protest and that sort of thing. Do you feel that we have as much freedom in Canada as we should have in terms of what the soldiers sacrificed for?
Well, the whole police repression. The thing is, like you just go back to the period, let's say between 1936 and 1945 in mainland Europe, and the thing is, the police repression. You want it, they got it. So, here the police officers they're being called on for everything. Somebody has a psychological problem, call the police. Does it make sense? For the most part, not unless if they've been trained as far as for intervention in that thing. Yes, somebody basically gets a little. If the guy's in his apartment, he's basically not doing anything except maybe threatening himself. Mm-hmm. Even if he's holding a knife, it's not time to pull out a gun.
Yeah,
if the guy comes towards you, back off.
Sure. No, I agree that there's that issue. I was speaking more about actual civil rights, democratic rights, the right to peacefully protest. I don't know if you've noticed, but
you classify that as being peaceful protest?
That's taking things a little far. The police actually didn't do anything that time. I'm talking about the student protests that were repressed and various other protests, very peaceful ones that I've seen with my own eyes, photographed, filmed, where they're getting shut down quite severely by the SPVM. To say nothing of what happened in Toronto with the
various G conferences.
Again, that was a number of years ago. And,
right.
There have been abuses.
Right.
But as a society, are we free to speak our minds and to protest? Yes, we are. Sometimes it gets out of hand, and then sometimes the police either bring it on or they're just there to try to stop it from getting worse. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could argue when we had the riots associated with the Stanley Cup and all of that sort of stuff, Mm-hmm. I mean, where do you stop?
Right. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your thoughts about that. It's something of a concern of mine.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a concern of all of us.
Right.
We're not the United States.
Right.
When you think of the deterioration of rights, I can argue that some of the deterioration of rights in the United States.
I would agree with you on that point. I think in some ways we're actually freer up here than the land of the free, or the land of the not so free.
All we can hope is that it returns to that.
Okay. So why don't we? I guess we'll talk to him first, and then yourself.
Sure. He's the big guy.
Go that far. Maybe in size only. Lieutenant Colonel retired Henry Hall.
And Hall is standard spelling?
Yes, H-A-L-O.
Okay, and so it's different this year. There's a lot of things that are going to be different. What do you think is going to be different?
Well, obviously the fact that we're not going to be able to have the public out, we're not going to have the troops on parade in the manner in which they normally would be on parade. Our ability to do even the poppy drive, which is what we just finished yesterday, was severely reduced because of the requirement to make sure that we properly distance and we wear masks and all of that. And a lot of stores weren't prepared to allow us in. Fortunately, we were able to do a coffee campaign in the Metro store. We did coffees by mail, so we tried to make it up in that way, and it's safe as our.
The Poppy campaign, it had challenges this year. I mean, you guys went to a mail model at one point, I understand, and yeah, the Metro store did let you in. I know that's where I got my Poppy at, Metro in Westmount. But I mean, it still remains that it was donations are way down this year. What do you attribute that to? Is there a generational component to that you might worry about, or is this just the pandemic?
Well, you know what? I think charitable donations are based upon visibility, and when the visibility isn't there, then the reality is that a lot of people just don't. It doesn't come to mind to donate. And so when you're out there and you're dressed as we are dressed, then we do get a lot more donations. And unfortunately this year, because of everything, and because downtown, we are focused downtown, you don't have the people downtown that you usually do, so the walk-bys, the drive-bys are not there. So I think that's part of the problem. The fact of the matter is that we do need these donations. They all are for those who are less fortunate than we are. And in that respect, we're very lucky that we are healthy, but a lot of our comrades aren't. And some of these other donations go to things like the Old Brewery Mission, where they've got a campaign to get veterans off the street, and other people off the street as well. So I mean, there's a lot of good things that we use with the Poppy campaign.
Along those lines, if you think it might be a generational thing, the military was very relevant this year. They went into the nursing homes, they went into the CHSLDs, and they helped out a lot of people. I think from a lot of sectors legitimately lionized them for that. What do you hope people take away from that whole situation?
Well, I hope that people take away, and I'd also like to mention the floods, where the soldiers were out helping in the flooding, that there are good Canadian soldiers and civilians, but soldiers that we're talking about, who are making that sacrifice of their own time and effort to help, and putting themselves in danger in the case of the COVID situation. To help, and we've had a number of soldiers who have been ill, but fortunately I'm not aware of anyone who passed away. But again, soldiers are younger, they're in good shape, and they are less likely, they're able to battle the COVID better than somebody who's in a nursing home. So I hope they take away with the idea that there is sacrifice still involved with the military, and that they do it willingly.
Yeah. Last question I've got, do you worry that maybe pandemic stuff, I mentioned the generational thing, do you worry that the problems that the Poppy campaign had this year will translate into a long-term issue, or do you hope that next year maybe you'll get it?
I'm hoping that next year, exactly as you said, I'm hoping that next year that it will translate into a recognition that although we lost a year being able to do the normal campaign, that come 2021, when things are returning to normal, we'll be able to do a full campaign, and then people will be even more generous than they were this year, and to make up for last year. Because certainly our Poppy campaign funds are going to be depleted, and we don't have the ability to support the different things that need to be helped along the way.
How far depleted was the Poppy campaign this year in comparison?
I would say that, from our experience, that we're probably down 50%, at least 50%.
That's what I got.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
And, I'm
And thanks for your service.
Unless you absolutely really want to speak. Okay. Okay.
George can speak for himself. I mean. Anyways, you guys, we do remember our comrades today, and for us, it's been on operation and lost people. It's a difficult time. And my dad and my grandparent, and both my grandfathers served. My grandfather served in the First World War, and my dad served in the Second World War. It's a very special time for us. It's always hard.
Yeah. I had a great uncle who was a Marine pilot in the Second World War in the United States. And, he won 2 flying crosses.
Wow.
The funny thing was he also disobeyed orders and he crash landed in the Philippines. Tried to tell him that he was going to come back with medical supplies. When he got back to the U.S. base, they wouldn't let him leave. So he took all the arms off of the plane and he crash landed it onto the village square. And it was loaded to the gills with medical stuff. They got him back out there and they were going to court-martial him for that. And my great-grandmother called up the newspaper while he was in transit from the Pacific to the States. And by the time they landed, the newspaper had kicked up such a fuss that they got him out of the brig and they said, "Get going, dummy, you're a civilian again."
Well, God bless them, and a lot of people have given their sacrifices. It always amazes me to hear these stories because what courage, putting them before yourself is always very hard to understand.
Sure.
Do it when you have to.
Yeah.
Anyways, you have a great day.
You too, Lieutenant. It's Lieutenant Colonel Henry Hall.
Yeah.
And Lieutenant Colonel Henry Hall. Okay, great.
Okay, take
Thank
care.
you, sir. Okay. Thank you.
You guys are going to look really good on YouTube.
Respecting others.